Now what I'm going to run through is just a little bit of open source strategy, just to wrap up this section. And with open source projects, they're not cults. I know every open source project I presented this slide to, they go, I want to be part of that cult. But the leader isn't always right. Critical thinking is critical. And it's okay if members move on. There's sort of like, sort of a cliquey approach in some projects. I think that really limits and restricts them from being as successful as they can be. So with open source projects, definitely try to be as open as possible and getting more into your community. Now, Dan Jenkins is going to be presenting on some of the challenges he sees in open source projects. I'm just giving my view here. He'll be going into much more depth, but it is both a product and a service. We covered some of the services, and it's really very fertile ground for any business. As you can see, there's lots of opportunities for consulting revenue, services revenue. But when you're looking at your product and service, it's important to understand, well, who's the target? And is it traditional telcos, their infrastructure vendors? Is it the Bay Area bullshit providers? The CPaaS, UCaaS, CSaaS? Is it regional providers that are looking at how to be competitive with the stuff that's coming out of the Bay Area bullshit machine? And then enterprise. Again, it's interesting, but it's expensive to reach. But again, we've seen, for example, a project like Matrix be very successful with the French government. Also, there's next generation telcos, MVNOs, alternate access providers like SimWord. I mean, they're expanding more into more telecom services, and they're scaling their business because they're being successful against the incumbents. And they can support open source projects, and then as they scale, then as a project, you then basically can support them as they build their business. And then another one is this whole area around integrators, value-added resellers, MSPs. And ScanSource is an example. They tend to be a lot more web-centric. Now, open source software can help them win against the Bay Area bullshit providers. And also in helping them move away from some of the legacy vendors. And some of the MSPs, for example, resell some of the big names that are quite legacy in approach. There's opportunities for open source projects to really help them build something that's fit for purpose to their market, to their customers, and at a fraction of the cost. So again, I think there's opportunities here, but again, it's more sort of web-centric in the approach than the sort of more traditional sort of telco-centric approach. That's why in marketing, I think many of the projects have done an excellent job in marketing to the other open source engineers. And you see the events, it's very similar, but we need to get a bit more diversity. And this is why I keep belaboring the point around documentation. That's why we have an invited keynote from Stephen Goodwin to talk around the importance of treating documentation as a product and some of the stuff that you need to do there to be successful. And to be frank, Twilio, Google have set the bar. So it's a web-centric approach, and it's providing the answers you need in as short a time as possible. When I say 20 minutes, that's really when somebody's looking at your project and saying, can I do two-factor authentication? You've really got 20 minutes to show them how to do it. Make it easy to be able to find in one place how to sign up, how to get messaging working, how to get the keys working, how to basically do the basic principles of a 2FA. And from that, then they're using it because you're just a feature to a developer. I think we need to sort of realize that the project isn't the be-all, the end-all. It's a part of a far broader offer. Now, don't get me wrong. As they build dependency, as they add in more capabilities from your projects, then the dependency grows more, and they dig deeper and deeper, and you have to have it all fully documented out. Don't get me wrong, but it's engaging in the that getting people on board initially, especially when they're taking a more web-centric approach, is I think where it's a gap that we need to fill across the industry. So just wrapping up, some key points. Open source telecom communication software is a global community of communities, and they're collaborating. I think it's a very strong, vibrant community, and it's almost everywhere. 80% of the CX tech companies rely on open source telecom software. Over the last 20 years, that has driven the bulk of innovation in telecoms. It's a $2 trillion market that's being democratized thanks to open source. But telecom open source is hard. The legacy ecosystem has not been as supportive as we see in the internet and in the enterprise. So it's a hard, long slog we've got here. We've got to work hard in raising awareness and getting more of the web developer community involved and using these projects. Even if it's a little bit, it's still important in getting them on board. So I think Telecom OS is very well positioned. It's achieved a lot over the last 20 years. It's really revolutionizing, but we really are in early days. We need to globalize. I think you can see the bias to Europe. You can see the bias to English-speaking countries. We need to focus more on India, the rest of Asia, Middle East, Russia, also adopting best practices from the web in terms of documentation, examples, code samples, and training. And just because India is so important, as you saw earlier on in the presentation, I'm going to use a cricket analogy. The last 20 years in telecom open source software, it's really just the first innings. We've still got 3 more to go. I think it's fair to say in 60 years' time, we will still be talking about some of these projects. Of course, we'll have advanced tremendously over the intervening 60 years, but open source software is around for a long time, and we've got a lot to do to expand globally and to make it as easy as possible for far more developers to use the resources that are being created. So that's it. I'm done. Thank you so much for taking the time and listening, and I hope you found this useful. Again, if you have any questions, please ask. I'm easy to contact. You can ask in the comments section of this weblog. You can ping me directly via TADSummit. So again, thank you so much. And just to mention a couple of other things we have coming up on the 25th and the 26th of September 2021, TADHack Global. So hopefully you can join us then. That will be hopefully, again, COVID-19 and the rest, the weekend before Enterprise Connect, which is the largest enterprise-focused communications event. And also we have, again, TADSummit coming up. We'll be doing Asia Online because we'll still be in sort of a situation where most people will not be vaccinated. And we're hoping by November 2021 to be doing something hybrid. So we will still, of course, support people who can't be in person, but we hope to have a physical location for TADSummit EMEA America. So fingers crossed for that. I'll have the exact details coming up, but just a couple of general dates for your diary. So thank you, take care, goodbye.